Joining me today for a Signal360 conversation is John Dick, the CEO and founder of Civic Science, a consumer data intelligence company. Really remarkable and unique. John, welcome to the Signal conversation.
Thank you, John. Great to be back with everybody.
All right, let's get right into it. Before we get to the news, I was wondering if you could refresh our audience's memory. What is Civic Science and what makes it unique?
Well, we started as a polling company. Wish I had a better word for it than that, but we engage people in questions and answers across the web in a very proprietary way. We had a clever idea about a decade or so ago at Carnegie Mellon to engage people inside of content they're consuming on the web. Reading an article on a website about the Beatles, we ask them a question at the end of that article about the Beatles. Turns out they're willing to answer 3 or 4 more questions about other topics in order to see the results to the first question that they answered. And we figured out how to do that at a tremendous scale. We're doing upwards of 4 to 5 million of these polls a day, billions of answers now historically, trended over time. And we've now evolving that as the sort of world of digital advertising is evolving and or running toward some significant privacy evolution. It turns out the data we gather actually has a lot of really strong applications in a privacy compliant way for media activation. So we're growing that part of the business on top of our consumer insights business.
You announced some news that I found very interesting. I think our audience will as well, since the majority of our audience is very involved in the marketing world and in the digital marketing world, which is one of the mainstays of the Signal conference and Signal360 coverage. So tell us about that news. What did you announce? And let's get a little deeper into what makes it unique, particularly in the context of what you mentioned earlier as it relates to the shift in the ad tech world.
The most notable news of that is this ad platform that we've been working to build now for almost 2 years on top of our data set is now commercially ready. And we knew that because and sort of made that decision based on the last wave of campaigns that we've run using our platform have just been increasingly performant. And so I'll explain a bit of how we do that. So we're asking surveys, massive amounts of them every day, fully permissioned, CCPA, GDPR compliant. The respondent explicitly gives us the ability to capture and store that information and use it in this way. And the thesis behind this business was that sort of future-proof, privacy-compliant, self-reported audience data analyzed at scale in an aggregate would allow us to define audiences on the web in a very ethical way. And that by using that data and really sophisticated models that we've built, that we could facilitate highly performant campaigns. And the outcomes of the last sort of 5 to 10 POCs that we've run really just prove to us that, yeah, we're onto something. We're seeing, even still at fairly early stages of the technology, are seeing campaigns with engagement lift of over 30% on average compared to some control campaigns we ran with other maybe not as ethically sourced data sets for comparison. And we're seeing upwards of 60+% conversion rates. So people are buying the thing our advertisers are trying to sell. And so we, having done all that work and all that due diligence, made the decision that the business was ready to launch. And we announced that just this past week.
Now, from the point of view of a marketer, what does this compare to in terms of channel? Is this sort of open web only? Does it go across social? And how are you acquiring the inventory that you're then, offering to your marketing partners?
So our early POCs are open web only. We have absolutely have designs on connected TV. We have done a couple case studies in within social environments, but it's a bit of a different story there. And right now we're running it as a managed service, just as we're kind of proving the capability. Longer term, because our polls are derived from first-party integrations that we have across a network of hundreds of premium publishers, Microsoft News to Penske Media and the like. Our longer term plan is to essentially create a private marketplace across that universe of publishers. But right now we're running more open web campaigns as a managed service. And again, as we're sort of building the data capabilities and the modeling capabilities, we'll map that to other channels down the road.
Makes sense. So can we pull back a bit, and maybe I'll ask you to do a bit of a admiration of the problem. You hinted at it, but what is the shift that's occurring in the digital advertising landscape that sort of set up this opportunity for your business to get into?
John, it's a mix of the shift that's happened to some extent so far, and the shift that we're betting is going to continue to happen around privacy and identity. And look, I understand there's a broad swath of points of view about what will happen and what should happen. We tend to be in the very sort of the far right or extreme end of the privacy mindset around this. That we need an internet that does not have cross-platform identity because it's not good for humanity. It is not good for publishers, we believe, particularly premium publishers. And frankly, we don't believe it's great for large brand advertisers. And I'll explain that a bit. But
wait, first let's define a term, just as a proxy for the audience. When you say cross-platform identity, are you speaking of like the fact that large companies like Google, Amazon, Apple, Facebook kind of know who you are everywhere, as well as the open web kind of ad tech ecosystem has trackers of one kind or another and creates that kind of an identity network?
Yes, all of that, right? And the sort of the third party cookie is the thing people probably talk the most about in the open web scenario. And Google's sort of been head faking about that now for a few years, but if you take them at their word, they fully intend at some point to fully eradicate it. And obviously the ad tech world has been frantically trying to develop alternatives, UID 2.0 and the like, or hashed emails, right? Which frankly, if you step back and you think about it, are just cookies of a different flavor. They don't really do anything to address the privacy implications of cross-platform tracking. And so, yes, obviously some of those bigger players do it, Google and Facebook and the like. But there's a full sort of cottage industry now of these new identifiers being spawned to track people across the web. It is the most nefarious terminology for it is surveillance marketing, which is quite frankly an appropriate terminology. And we deeply believe that it's not good for humanity, not good for publishers, and really not good for big brand advertisers. It's nobody's business what I do as I traverse the web. It's nobody's. While I may have a quote first party relationship with Target, and I'm comfortable with Target knowing everything about what I buy at their store, it's none of Target's business what TV shows I watch if I don't volunteer that information to them. And right now we have some plumbing and infrastructure that allows those things to happen to the detriment of pretty much everybody involved.
Yeah, and so from the point of view of a marketer, what is on offer through the insights you've derived through billions of surveys and paying attention to what people are interested in, what they tell you? Are you creating kind of a contextual audience network as opposed to a first party identified audience network?
It's a bit of both, right? So within a given publisher, so let's take a Nexstar, for example, where there is a first party identifier within the constraints of the portfolio of Nexstar properties. We are able to identify that user at a user level within the constructs of that platform. And so enabling advertisers to reach that person on a first party basis inside of, say, a Nexstar is feasible and privacy compliant and ethical and all of those things. When we roll back to the broader open web, we are able to do on a modeled basis by understanding sort of the given attributes of an archetype of segment and understanding, say, what kind of content they're consuming on the web. Compare sort of the identity or the model of that, the lookalike model of that user against a piece of content they're consuming across our broader network of publishers.
Right. Understood. What's the scale? I imagine if I could be the proxy for Procter and Gamble here, they're always interested in the question of scale. They're a mass reach organization, as are many others. So, what is the scale you're talking about here as it relates to this new product, or is it still scaling up?
Well, at the identity level across sort of the quote private marketplace model I discussed, I mean, that identity sort of footprint is absolutely in its early stages and scaling up. But the campaigns that we've run have been internet scale, right? It's all based on modeled. It's all based on building models. And if you think about it, we use a survey question to ask someone, "Are you currently in the market to buy an automobile?" And we get tens of thousands of people to say, "Yes, I'm currently in the market to buy an automobile." Turns out that's a really, really good signal of somebody who's in the market to buy an automobile, right? I mean, so often of that is inferred, maybe based on a search someone does, which of course is very reliable, but also maybe can be misleading, and or maybe a piece of content that they consume. So we take that audience of people who say, "Yes, I'm in the market to buy an automobile." We've got now billions of data points to connect and analyze among across that universe of people who say they're likely to buy a car, and we've got demographics and psychographics and all the other content attributes we have about people like that. And so we take that seed audience of people and we can map that to a much larger audience of the web based on some of those contextual signals that you mentioned, or other lookalike attributes that we can build against.
So another one of the things that Signal pays attention to is innovation and entrepreneurship. You've clearly, over the past 10 plus years now with your company, been an innovative entrepreneur. This is a big step, right? I mean, we're talking about moving from being an insights business, a data-driven insights business, and an intelligence business, into potentially an advertising business that could possibly be much bigger than the business you're currently in. How do you think about that, and what kind of conversations and deliberations did you have as you decided whether or not to get into this new line of business?
Well, I did it kicking and screaming, John, to be honest with you, because quite frankly, I've always found ad tech to be somewhat repugnant. And there were in the earlier years of our business, we were tempted and lured frequently into that world of, "Hey, Civic Science, you have all this fabulous data. You should put it into these, swamps of other data, and people can buy ads against it." And we always felt like, first of all, we feel like we have a covenant with our respondents that we weren't going to share their individual level data with the broader universe, and then it just always struck me as a market that was very murky and maybe again sort of nefarious in some ways. But it was really our publisher partners initially that were coming to us. This was now probably about 3 years ago when this spawned, saying, "Hey, John, a lot of this infrastructure we use to power ads on our platform is going away and or will go away. And it occurs to us that the way you gather data about our audience is sort of future proof vis-a-vis a lot of these changes that are going to happen." And we hummed and hawed about it and said, "No, we're not really in that business." And then some of our brand partners who we inform with our insights that they use to drive kind of media planning and strategy started saying the same thing. "Hey, John, all this data you provide to us that helps inform our strategy, it occurs to us that it's being gathered inside of these premium brand environments where we would like our creative to live." And so there was just a groundswell of that. And really what the tipping point was the CES conference in 2020, right before COVID, where I met with a lot of these different people and felt like this is a really big potential business opportunity. So get a little bit of sort of behind the scenes. We engaged with one of the very large consulting firms whose name everybody knows, to assess the market opportunity for us. That assessment came back very promising. We worked with them to develop a business plan, which then became an investment document. We brought in a large swath of new investors to the company to spawn the business we now call Rulo. I will say it's not in any way replacing our intelligence business or even supplanting it. It's turning out more and more that the two businesses kind of create a flywheel between one another, and that's the end game. And it's really we think more about what the aggregate of those two businesses can be. And yes, it can be a very large business if we can execute on the advertising side.
Well, that leads me to my final question. In the newsletter that I read a week ago or so, actually just a few days ago, you said we haven't really even scratched the surface of what's possible. Can you sketch out that if everything goes, largely to plan. What does this look like in 2 to 5 years?
So right now we're focused on still lots of proof to both the advertisers as well as our publisher partners that this new way of driving audience creation and driving activation, it can perform on par, if not better, than a lot of the ways that it's been done for the last 10 to 20 years. What's happening to get greater scale? We need more publishers in our universe, and that's a bit of a I don't know if chicken egg is the right metaphor, but as we demonstrate greater efficacy of the campaigns we run, we find more publishers who are interested in bringing our platform onto their site. And so that has created that's a bit more of the flywheel as well. It's starting to create a snowball effect of, because previously we would sell our capabilities to publishers who implement our widgets inside of their content we don't pay for that. So we're getting 600-700 million page views of our JavaScript across a lot of premium publishers, and we don't pay a penny CPM for that. Why? Because we provide some insights back to those publishers to help support their ad sales, their editorial content, and so forth. A very sort of analog barter with the publisher. Now we're saying to them, hey, in addition to all those analog services we provide, we're able to activate this first-party data for you and drive new ad revenue to your platform. And as we tell that story, we're creating a greater groundswell of publisher interest, which helps to grow our scale, and so on and so on. So there's that sort of virtuous loop that creates. So really driving and accelerating that virtuous loop is our huge focus of ours this year. And a bit of the chicken and egg there is we need enough scale to attract the right advertisers, to bring the right dollars to the publishers, to get more publishers, and so on, right? So that snowball is the thing that will drive the company. Now, in terms of scratching the surface, there's also a tremendous amount of technology investment we're making in, Wave's hands, machine learning, and AI to get smarter and smarter about the models that we're building, testing those models, learning from those models, making the next wave of models smarter. And then last but not least, the thing that we certainly advocate for and try to be as outwardly outspoken about as possible is privacy policy actually evolving. There's still a big part of the market that's either in denial about coming change or actively resistant to it. And that tends to emanate a lot from the existing ad tech infrastructure players as well as the agencies who benefit from the current state of play, either because they've invested immensely in the infrastructure or they benefit from the complexity and the opaqueness of it, right? Advertisers need to pay a lot of people to help them advertise because it's positioned to them as an incredibly complicated thing to do. And so we're swimming upstream against a lot of industry energy that among players who don't want to see things change. So our position in say 2 to 5 years is going to really depend a lot on how that evolves.
Yeah, well, I can see it, and congratulations on this big step for your business, and very much appreciate you spending a few minutes with us to explain what's going on at Civic Science, and hopefully we'll see you this coming July in Cincinnati once again.
Well, I'll commit right now when you invite me, John. I had a blast last time. It was a great group, incredibly well put together event. So would love to join. And let me just say, I mean, we did announce that kind of news last weekend, but we're not uncorking any bottles of champagne yet. We still have a long way to go. It's a big market to try to move, right? Advertising is deeply entrenched in the way that it's done, and there's a lot of sunk cost in infrastructure and other things that we're not strong enough to move on our own. It's going to require a lot of visionary leadership from marketers to drive change in advertising. That's where the money comes from. We talk about government maybe regulating us toward better privacy, or the platform self-regulating, which is never going to happen really to its full extent. And it's really going to depend on the spenders, right? They're the ones who drive the market. So anyway, thanks for having me, John, and look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks very much to John Dick, CEO of Civic Science, for this month's Signal conversation.